Hi, Scott. ROCKFILE back with another podcast review. Let's talk about 2019's Hellboy again. I imagine there's a review up from 2020 or 2019 when this movie came out, and I watched it on home video. I did see it at the theater. I thought the whole idea behind this, to have Mike Mignola, the guy who created the comic, to be more involved, to have David Harbour. If you're not going to get Del Toro and Ron Perlman back, then find somebody who can do the role. And I think one of the best things about this reboot is his portrayal. David Harbour did a great job as Hellboy. The movie's directed by Neil Marshall, who's been hit or miss. I really like some of his older movies, like The Descent and Dog Soldiers. I thought Doomsday was okay, Centurion was okay, and I thought this was okay. But watching it, I saw it in the theater. I've watched it on home video at least once, and I'm revisiting some movies from my collection that are supposed to be great transfers and great Atmos soundtracks, which this both is. If you own the 4K, you know. Looks great, sounds great, regardless of what you think of the film. Watching it now, knowing what I know, this is closer to the feel of the comic book. If you've ever read Hellboy, this is kind of the more irreverent tone. Now, I'm not going to say anything bad about the Del Toro Perlman movies. When books are made into movies, when comic books are made into movies, changes are made to make them more cinematic to the people making the movie, the producers and the director and everybody involved. And I do not fault what Del Toro, Perlman, and the rest of the team did with those first two movies. They are classics, in my opinion. You can't really touch them. The first one is a great portrayal of Hellboy, at least what we could get, and what he did with the budget, the characters, and the acting, that just works as a film. The second one is also very good. Almost gets a little crazy there, but again, watching it, I've watched both several times. The first two Hellboys are just, to me, you can't really touch them. The second one, not up to the first one, but still really good. So they waited years to try and reboot it, and again, Lionsgate got the rights, and we had some original producers here involved. Lawrence Gordon and his team worked with Dark Horse, who also owned the rights, and got a decent cast. You got David Harbour, Mia Jovovich, Ian McShane, Sasha Lane, Daniel Day Kim, and Thomas Hayden Church, briefly as the Lobster. The fact that they even brought a couple characters into this film that hadn't happened before, I guess they didn't want to just go back to the same characters we'd had in the first two films. If you're going to reboot it, let's take a different slice. And David Harbour in The Extra says a great thing. He goes, how many different versions of Hamlet I've seen where every time an actor brings his own kind of thing to the role? He goes, I look at Hellboy. It's not exactly Macbeth, but still I can bring my own. And they took a darker take on the character, and I think he plays it well, and I think it goes hand in hand with what Ron Perlman did, actually. He worked a long time. He built some gear at home so he could replicate like the big arm and everything and practice and get used to everything. His performance is pretty much the best thing in the film, although it looks fantastic. This is a native 4K transfer with very little to no grain in anything. It's clean, clear, precise, some great highlights, city scenes, fire, magic, that kind of stuff. And kudos to Neil Marshall for making the choice to make most of the creatures practical. Baba Yaga is a witch we meet in this, and her makeup is one of the grossest, most disgusting witch-type makeup things I have ever seen, and it is absolutely wonderful. Her teeth are terrible. Her skin is terrible. She looks real, and it's an actress under the makeup. It's not a remote head. It's not CGI. Looks fantastic. And there is a post-credit scene with her. They do close-ups and stuff. It's amazing work. One of the pretty much biggest negative of the film, there's too much here. It is convoluted to all get out. We're jumping here, we're jumping there, we're jumping. And comic books do that, I get it. But had we just taken out maybe a section here, the whole thing would have flowed better. There just seems to be, they wanted to squeeze so much into this film. And if you're looking for a slow film to watch, this one isn't, because it bops from one thing to another. There is very little time to take a breath, and it's a lot of action. And other than with the giants, there's a scene in the middle where he's got to take out some giants. Yes, that's all computer generated, but man, I was impressed with how good it looked. It was pretty seamless. Like, This was a $50 million budget. They had to spend over half the budget on the special effects. It looks incredible. Most of the effects look insane. A lot of prosthetic stuff. There's Mia Jovovich is the witch Nimue, however you pronounce it, who was basically cut apart by Excalibur and King Arthur at the beginning of the film, and they actually created the body parts and had to stitch them back together, and it's all practical, and that's why the film plays so well. There are some computer-generated stuff for some things you really just couldn't pull off practically, and it does look really good. The movie has too much in it. Mia Jovovich is just okay as the witch. I think she gives a decent performance, but it would have been nice to see just somebody else in there. Not that I have any problems with her. I think she's fine as an actress, especially in a lot of the things she's been in, the Resident Evil movies and such. She is fine for that type of thing. And I think she gave it a good shot here. I just kind of would like, I don't know. It just seemed a little flat to me. It was good, but flat. I thought everybody else was pretty darn good at it. Want more with Daniel Day Kim's character? If you haven't seen the film, he's a guy with a big scar across his face, and you find out later why. Pretty impressive, and not some of the best special effects in the movie, but they kept that to a minimum. We have too much in this film. There is an ending kind of beat, there is a mid-credit beat, and there is an end credit beat. And two of those are introducing characters that weren't in the movie. Well, the lobster was barely in the film. But then they give an allusion at the end to a character we're familiar with, that we're going to see him in the next film that was never made. So that's kind of and too many callbacks at the end of the film. Just end the movie and give us one. It just seemed like they were trying to do too much with the film. And if they had created a slightly shorter, slightly simpler storyline, I think the movie would have played better. But again, you were always an uphill battle. Del Toro and Perlman knocked it out of the park on 2 movies with decent-sized budgets that everything was on the screen. I think a lot of that's here, and I think Neil Marshall gave it a good shot, but it's inconsistent tone. Like, there are just places, and it's really, really gory. That's another thing about this. It was a good idea to go full R. That's what the fans want, but that gave the movie a different feel. The first 2 Hellboys are gory in their own way, but it's still in that PG-13 way. It's not going to disturb too many people. But this one goes over the top with the gore. You see cleaved heads and body parts all the time, people eviscerated, entrails, you name it, things squished that you don't want to see squished, all that kind of stuff. It's a pretty gory film, but again, we were going more towards the comic book because that's what the fans have been screaming for. The only complaints about the early Del Toro movies were that they just weren't close enough to the comic books. But that wasn't a complaint, really, because he did such a great job with those 2 films. But this one was trying to correct what few wrongs there were and just seems to put just a little too many ingredients into the pot. Watching it now, I got more out of it than I ever did because I see David Harbour giving it his best shot. I see filmmakers really trying to do it right. And, sometimes movies just don't come together the way you hope. And some things hit and some things miss. And there could have been just a little judicious editing in here that would have made this a much, much better film. I don't think it's terrible. And, I guess I'll revisit the other one. There have been 4 Hellboy movies. The first 2 I love. This one I now kind of like. And then there's, the one that came out recently that had its moments, but it was so low budget they really couldn't get around that. And the performance of Hellboy was so different than the 2 that had come before. Anyway. Long story short, I wish we had gotten a sequel to this one. They might have been able to course correct enough, but it made only about $50 million or made $55 million on a $50 million budget. It just wasn't in the cards for David Harbour to continue. And that's unfortunate. And unfortunately, right now, it's kind of a dead property because we've had 4 theatrical movies. They might do something animated. I don't know what Mike Mignola is going to do. I believe he's working on another comic book. So anyway, long story short, this movie was not terrible. It's too bad that it was savaged by critics and died a horrible death because it's really... There's a lot of crap out there these days, and this is crap that actually they were trying to make good crap. It just kind of came out a little crappy. Anyway, I don't think it's terrible. It's certainly not the first 2, and it's much better than the 4th. So Hellboy 2019, if you're so inclined, it's a really nice 4K from Lionsgate. And if you picked up the original Steelbook, that design was actually Mike Mignola. People went, oh, I don't know if it was gray with the Hellboy in the rain, and he kind of had that look that Hellboy always has in the comic. People were like, it's not like the movie. No, but that's exactly what the comic book looks like, and that's what I like about that Steel book. Anyway, Hellboy 2019, not terrible. I love David Harbour. Scott, I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts are on the way. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a spectacular day.